This berry costs £5, but look inside, almost white. Now watch this, 750% more pigment, and you'll never find it in shops. Here's why. Modern berry production optimized for distribution, not concentration. Look at this blueberry. It survives weeks on supermarket shelves, but cut it open. See that pale flesh? The pigment is only in the skin. Now watch this. This is a honeyberry. The color saturates from skin to core. It releases deep purple pigment, but you'll almost never find it in shops. And the reason isn't quality, it's shipping logistics. Before we understand why, let me show you what's actually on your supermarket shelf right now. Walk into any Tesco or Sainsbury's berry section. Blueberries from Chile, strawberries from Spain, raspberries from Morocco, all sitting under fluorescent lights in plastic clamshells. Pick up that punnet of blueberries, £5. The label says, rich in antioxidants. Marketing copy written by someone who's never measured anthocyanin content, as we'll see from laboratory studies in a moment. Bite into one. What do you taste? Water, maybe a hint of tartness, but mostly nothing. That's not an accident. These berries were bred for shelf life and visual appeal, not flavour, the thick, waxy skin that protects them during shipping. It also traps what little flavour they have inside a barrier your mouth struggles to break down. For decades, what's available in shops has defined our understanding of what's possible. Perfect rows of identical berries, shipped from halfway across the world. But there's an entire category of plants that never made it to commercial distribution. Not because they're inferior, because they're incompatible with modern supply chains. To understand how this is possible, we travelled to northern Minnesota. Here, amongst the endless snow, lives Robert. Robert, thank you for letting us into your garden in this bitter cold. Show us what survived when everything else died.
Oh, hello there. Sorry, I'm not really used to cameras. Um, so these are honeyberries. I've been growing them about 15 years now. That first winter after I planted them, it hit minus 40 degrees. My peach trees, strawberries, everything else in the garden, completely dead. But these? They didn't even flinch, you know? And I thought, what kind of plant survives that? Now in June, early June, I walk out here, pick a handful, eat them fresh. They ripen before the pests even wake up. 7 times more antioxidants than blueberries, apparently. I don't really understand all that, but I stopped buying berries years ago. These bushes, they don't ask for much. Just a bit of water in spring. And they keep giving. Year after year. 15 years now. Best 40 pounds I ever spent, honestly.
Robert's discovery wasn't luck, it was biology. To understand why this plant is extraordinary, we need to look at where it evolved. The honeyberry is a member of the honeysuckle family. Most honeysuckles are toxic, but this is the blueberried exception, adapted for the boreal forest. Most fruit-bearing plants evolved in temperate climates. They expect mild winters, predictable springs, human intervention. The honeyberry evolved in Siberia, Kamchatka, northern Japan, places where winter isn't a season. It's a 6-month survival test. Temperatures plunge to minus 50 Celsius, stay there for weeks. A late frost in May, it kills everything blooming. Except this plant. These plants require almost nothing. Robert mulches them once a year with wood chips. That's it. No fertilizer, no spraying, no pruning unless a branch breaks. His raspberry bushes demand constant attention. These honeyberries simply exist and produce, year after year. His oldest bushes are 15 now, actually producing more than they did in year 5. Whilst a commercial peach blossom will die at minus 2 Celsius, the open blossom of a honeyberry can withstand minus 7 Celsius without damage. The flowers, the most delicate part of any plant, can survive well below freezing whilst fully open. The wood itself survives minus 45 Celsius. The mechanism is in the cellular chemistry. Inside the cells, something remarkable happens when temperatures drop. Whilst other plants form ice crystals that puncture cell walls, the honeyberry produces natural cryoprotectants. Sugars and proteins that lower the freezing point of cellular fluid. It's the same mechanism Arctic fish use. Look at these flowers. They bloom early, sometimes late April in Minnesota, which is risky. Apple blossoms turn black from a light frost, just -2 and they're finished. But honeyberry blossoms can be covered in ice, literally frozen solid, and they simply recover when it warms. The flowers can handle -7 Celsius. No other fruit can do that. But it's not just cold tolerance. This plant reads day length, not just temperature. It won't be fooled by a warm February week into blooming too early. Right, here's where it gets interesting. The real difference isn't just cold tolerance. The blueberry has become the commercial standard. Let me show you why that's interesting from a plant chemistry perspective. Watch what happens when we cut open both berries side by side. The blueberry, pale inside, almost white. The honeyberry, deep purple from skin to core. That visual difference tells you everything about pigment concentration. See the difference? That's not aesthetics. That's 750% higher anthocyanin concentration. But here's what the laboratory reports don't capture. Taste. Shop blueberries taste like wet paper with a hint of sour. There's no depth. Honeyberries, intense, almost wine-like, sweet tart balance. When you bite down, the juice actually tastes like something. Robert's children call shop berries the fake ones now. Once you've had real flavour, you can't go back. That intensity isn't subjective preference, that's measurable chemistry. That saturation you're seeing? That's anthocyanins packed densely through every cell. These compounds are what the plant uses to protect itself from UV radiation and oxidative stress in harsh climates. These compounds are studied extensively for their role in plant defense and general nutrition. This color comes from anthocyanins, specifically cyanidin 3-glucoside. It's one of the most studied polyphenols in plant biochemistry. According to research by the University of Saskatchewan, a standard blueberry contains roughly 160 to 200 milligrams of total anthocyanins. The honeyberry, between 400 and 1,500 milligrams, depending on variety. You don't need to remember these numbers, just remember the color. That's a concentration difference of up to 750%. Simply a measurement of pigment density. When you dilute the pigment to make berries survive shipping, you dilute the flavor in exact proportion. But here's what's fascinating from a food science perspective. Those numbers are for fresh berries. The moment a blueberry is picked and enters distribution, those compounds begin degrading. Some studies document degradation of up to 40% within 7 days post-harvest. Honeyberries are too delicate for extended distribution, which means if you're consuming them fresh, minimal post-harvest degradation. Robert's routine in June is simple. He walks out every morning with his coffee, picks whatever's ripe, fills a small bowl, eats half standing there in the garden. The berries ripen over about 3 weeks, so he gets fresh honeyberries daily for most of June. No processing, no freezing, just pick and eat. The flavour is so intense, his wife describes it as eating concentrated summer. She tried making jam once. Robert told her she was converting them to sugar. These are meant fresh, concentrated summer. That's what's missing from your supermarket punnet. You're not just buying lower anthocyanin content, you're buying berries that have been systematically bred to be forgettable. Right, we've shown you the pigment difference and the flavour difference, but there's something else shop berries can't compete with: freshness. When Robert picks a honeyberry in June, how long until he eats it? Sometimes he doesn't even make it back to the house. 30 seconds from branch to mouth. That's it. Compare that to a commercial blueberry, picked in Chile on Monday, transported by refrigerated lorry to a port, shipped across the Atlantic for 7 to 10 days, cleared through customs, distributed to a regional warehouse, delivered to your local Tesco, sits on the shelf for another 3 days. By the time you buy it, that berry is 2 weeks old. The anthocyanins have degraded by 40%. The sugars have converted. The cell structure is breaking down. You're paying £5 for a 2-week-old berry that's lost nearly half its compound density. Robert's honeyberries, 30 seconds old, peak everything. The supermarket can't compete with that. Not because they don't want to, because their entire business model depends on berries that can survive 2 weeks of abuse. Now then, to understand why this matters, we need to go back, way back. The honeyberry isn't new to humans, it's new to industrial agriculture. For centuries, the Ainu people of Hokkaido, Japan, cultivated this plant. They called it haskap. The name means the berry of long life and many blessings. The Ainu didn't have laboratories, but they had centuries of empirical observation. This was knowledge passed through direct experience. Whilst the Ainu understood this berry spiritually, the Soviet Union understood it strategically. Picture this: 1950s, Cold War, millions of Soviet workers in Siberia, the Urals, the Far East, regions where winter temperatures hit -50°C. Scurvy was weakening labour productivity. They couldn't import citrus without depending on the West. So Soviet scientists were sent to the most remote corners of Kamchatka, not to publish papers, to solve a strategic vulnerability. For decades, this berry was bred in closed research stations, genetics treated like classified technology. The goal wasn't profit, it was sovereignty. They bred for one thing first: survive anything. Flavour was secondary. The result? Berries that could outlive a Siberian winter but tasted like medicine. It wasn't until the Soviet Union collapsed that these genetics became accessible to the West. Locked knowledge suddenly released. When Robert learned about the Soviet breeding program, it made sense why these plants are so resilient. They weren't bred for export markets. They were bred for climate extremes, for feeding people where almost nothing else survives. That creates a fundamentally different selection pressure. The modern varieties from Canada took that resilience and added palatability. In the late 1990s, Dr. Bob Bors at the University of Saskatchewan began crossing the cold, hardy Russian varieties with the sweet Japanese varieties. The result was the modern honeyberry, resilience with palatability. This is why varieties have names like Aurora, Borealis and Indigo gem. They're recent genetics representing decades of systematic selection that only became public in the last 20 years. You're growing the result of 3,000 years of Ainu observation, 70 years of Soviet strategic breeding, and 25 years of Canadian refinement. Right, so if this berry has 750% higher pigment concentration, survives extreme cold, and produces for 50 years, why isn't it commercially available? The answer reveals how existing distribution models prioritize shipping durability. Robert has spoken with commercial growers. They've tried honeyberries, run pilots. Same conclusion every time: not viable for bulk transport. One grower lost an entire harvest because berries started fermenting in crates during a 3-hour transport. Labour costs for gentle handling made them more expensive than imported raspberries. The current model favours shipping durability. I spoke with a distribution manager at a major UK berry supplier. Off the record, he told me something revealing. We know honeyberries have higher compound density, but our entire infrastructure, harvesting machines, transport containers, cold storage protocols, is built for durability, not fragility. Retooling for one berry? The board would never approve it. This isn't conspiracy, it's simply economics. The blueberry succeeded commercially because of thick, waxy skin. This allows mechanical harvesting, bulk container transport, days in distribution, weeks in storage, overseas shipping, and it still looks acceptable on shelves. This is why Chilean blueberries are available in January in London. Distribution efficiency. The honeyberry skin is almost non-existent, meltingly soft, more delicate than raspberry. In bulk transport, bottom layers crush under the weight. You arrive with juice, not fruit. The berry separates from the stem with what botanists call a wet scar. Blueberries seal instantly. Honeyberries remain open at the attachment point. 3-day shelf life. Stains packaging. Not viable for large-scale distribution, regardless of pigment concentration. The existing distribution model cannot accommodate a 3-day shelf life. so the berry that doesn't fit the system never reaches the shelf. This distribution incompatibility creates local opportunity. Let's walk through what you're actually buying when you choose shop berries. Commercial blueberries, picked unripe so they survive shipping, and unripe fruit never develops full flavour. Treated with fungicide to prevent mold during transport. Refrigerated for up to 14 days before reaching you, during which volatile flavour compounds evaporate. Bred for thick skin and long shelf life, not flavour or compound density. Taste: watery, bland, one-dimensional. Cost: £5 per punnet. Anthocyanin content: 160 to 200 milligrams and degrading daily. Robert's honeyberries, picked at peak ripeness in his garden, when sugars and acids are perfectly balanced. 0 treatments, 0 chemicals. Consumed within minutes or hours of harvest. All volatile aromatics intact. Bred for survival in -40 Celsius and maximum anthocyanin production. Taste: complex, wine-like, intense sweet tart, memorable. Cost after year 3: effectively 0. 2 bushes, £40, 50 years of production. Anthocyanin content: 400 to 1,500 milligrams at absolute peak. Now, which would you rather eat? The supermarket berry optimized for logistics, or the garden berry optimized by 3,000 years of natural selection? Here's what the supermarket doesn't want you thinking about. Every time you buy that £5 punnet of Chilean blueberries, you're paying for mechanical harvesting equipment, refrigerated transport across continents, warehouse storage, retail markup, packaging waste that goes straight to landfill, and you're getting a berry that's been bred to survive that journey. Not optimised for nutritional density, Robert's honeyberries can't play that game. They're too real, too honest, too perishable, which is precisely why you need to grow them yourself. Robert's oldest bushes are 15 years old. If we calculate how much he's saved on shop-bought berries over that time, the numbers seem almost impossible. 15 years of growing these plants. Best £40 Robert ever spent. People ask him for cuttings constantly. He tells them not to waste time. Honeyberries don't root easily and won't maintain characteristics from cuttings. Just buy 2 plants from a reputable nursery. £40. Plant them. Wait 2 years. Then berries for decades. The most efficient investment in his garden. Let me show you those numbers. Here's the calculation supermarkets don't want you doing. A punnet of commercial blueberries, £5, one-time consumption. Buy them weekly for 50 years, £2,500, and that's assuming prices don't rise. 2 honeyberry plants, £40 total, one-time purchase. Year 1, no harvest, you're £40 invested. Year 2, light harvest, £2 of berries. Year 3, full production begins, £10 annually. Investment recovered in year 3. Then £470 more of berries over the next 47 years. Shop equivalent, £2,350. But remember, these have 750% higher pigment concentration and 0 post-harvest degradation. This is long-term food planning, not hobby gardening. Right then, you're convinced. Now here's exactly how to make this work. The honeyberry is a northern plant. It thrives in USDA hardiness zones 2 through 7. It requires chill hours, specifically 1,000 to 1,200 cumulative hours between 0 and 7 Celsius. Chill hours are cumulative time where temperature is cold but not freezing. This triggers hormonal changes that prepare the plant for spring growth. Without adequate chill, buds don't open properly. Flowering becomes erratic. This is why many fruits that thrive in Michigan fail in Georgia. Insufficient winter cold. Honeyberries need serious winter. If you live in Southern California or Florida, these won't work. But if you live anywhere with proper winter, Canada, Northern USA, Northern Europe, parts of Russia and China, these work well. In winter, these plants go dormant. They look like lifeless sticks. Don't panic. This dormancy is their evolutionary adaptation. Critically important, don't buy seeds. Honeyberries don't maintain characteristics from seed. Buy grafted plants from reputable nurseries. Look for varieties like Aurora, Borealis, Indigo Gem, or the Beast from specialised sources like Honeyberry USA or One Green World. Each variety has slightly different characteristics. Aurora is early ripening with large berries, Borealis is mid-season and extremely productive. Indigo Gem is compact, suitable for smaller spaces. The Beast produces massive berries and huge yields, but requires more room. But here's the critical requirement. The pairing requirement is critical. Robert made this mistake initially. He bought one plant. It flowered beautifully. 0 berries. He called the nursery. They explained he needed 2 different varieties. He ordered a second, planted it that autumn. Next June, both bushes loaded with fruit. Cross-pollination isn't optional. Buy 2 varieties or don't bother. Honeyberries are not self-fertile. You must plant at least 2 different varieties that bloom simultaneously. If you plant Aurora, pair it with Borealis or Indigo Gem. Without compatible pairing, you'll have flowers but no fruit. Plant in early spring or late autumn when dormant. Dig a hole twice as wide as root ball. Crown at soil level. If your soil is heavy clay, amend with compost or plant on a slight mound. Mulch heavily. Then minimal intervention. These evolved in forests where nobody managed them. Deer ignore them. The leaves have fuzzy texture. Pests rarely bother them. Fruit ripens in late May or early June, before most insect populations emerge. Maintenance is minimal. Robert mulches with wood chips every spring, 10 minutes for all 6 bushes. He doesn't prune, doesn't fertilise, doesn't spray. In 15 years he's never had disease problems, never had significant pest damage. He just harvests in June. Compare that to strawberries, which need replanting every 3 years. These are the lowest maintenance fruit he's grown. Year 1, water during dry spells. Year 2, perhaps compost in spring. Year 3 onward, harvest berries, remove dead wood if noticed, otherwise leave alone. A healthy bush can produce for 50 years. I've heard from growers in Alaska, northern Canada and Scandinavia who have bushes 30 plus years old, still producing abundantly. These are plants you install once and essentially forget about. What Robert showed us here in Minnesota. This berry demonstrates remarkable cold tolerance, produces pigment concentrations 750% higher than commercial alternatives, and costs £40 once for 50 years of production. Robert demonstrated that the most cold-resilient plants are often the ones that existing distribution models cannot accommodate. One plant, one garden, one practice that survives extreme conditions. This is the pattern. Some of the most pigment-rich foods don't scale well in global supply chains. They don't fit industrial distribution. They require local cultivation or local sourcing. The honeyberry is delicate, perishable, and impossible to ship long distances, which makes it unsuitable for mass distribution but perfectly suited for gardens like Robert's. This is about restoring local access to foods at their natural peak. If you're interested in growing what commercial distribution cannot accommodate, subscribe to The Forbidden Garden. Next episode, we're travelling to Italy. A perennial that produces for 20 years, survives drought, frost and neglect, yields 10 times more per square metre than lettuce. But in 1984, it nearly disappeared. The EU tried to ban it. Seed companies refused to sell it. One Italian grandmother kept it alive in her garden, and now it's coming back. The plant the industry couldn't kill. I'm Eleanor, and I'll see you in the next one.